dawn broke slowly over the English Channel on June 6, 1944. Not with the warmth of sunrise, but with a cold, pale light that revealed the impossible scale of the Allied invasion. The sea was filled with ships, row after row, stretching to the horizon. Battleships, destroyers, troop transports, landing craft, supply vessels, an entire floating world of metal and men. Inside one of those landing craft, engine roaring, waves slamming against steel, stood a man who would soon walk straight into legend. Brigadier General Norman Dutch Cota, 51 years old, weathered face, calm eyes. A lifetime of military experience carved into his posture. He was no stranger to fear, but what he saw that morning would test every ounce of courage he possessed. The wind carried the distant rumble of naval guns. Massive shells screamed overhead, slamming into the cliffs of Normandy. Columns of smoke rose like black pillars. But what struck Cota most was the silence inside his own craft. Dozens of young soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder, gripping rifles so tightly their knuckles turned white. Some mouthed silent prayers. Others stared down at their boots, trembling. Cota spoke softly but firmly. Remember your training. Stick together. And when we hit that beach, keep moving. A sergeant asked him if he believed the naval bombardment had cleared the German defenses. Cota looked toward the dark silhouette of Omaha Beach, barely visible through the smoke. It'll take more than shells to break those fortifications. He was right. As they approached the shore, the first sign of disaster came floating past them, a wrecked landing craft, half submerged, riddled with bullet holes. Several bodies drifted nearby, bobbing in the waves like broken mannequins. The younger soldiers stared in shock. "God help us," one of them whispered. Cota didn't flinch. He simply said, "Eyes forward, we're going in." Moments later, the landing craft slammed into the shallows with a violent crunch. The ramp dropped, and the world exploded. Machine gun fire tore into the front ranks, cutting down men before they could take a single step. Sand erupted in fountains as bullets stitched across the beach. Mortar shells burst overhead, showering shrapnel into the surf. The noise was so overwhelming it felt like the air was being ripped apart. Cota jumped into waist-deep water, his boots dragging heavily through the tide. Cold shot through him like electricity, but he pushed forward, screaming for men to follow. The surf churned with blood. Bodies drifted past him. Rifles and helmets floated aimlessly as their owners sank below the waves. When Cota reached the sand and lifted his head, he finally saw the truth. Omaha Beach was a killing field. Landing craft were wrecked and burning. Men huddled behind flimsy obstacles, too terrified to move. Engineers struggled to place charges. Medics crawled from one wounded soldier to the next with little hope of saving them. Entire units had been wiped out before even reaching the seawall. What Cota saw next chilled him even more. The German defenses, the concrete bunkers, the machine gun nests, the interlocking trenches, were still intact. Unscarred, unshaken. The bombardment had failed. The Germans were firing with precision, discipline, and deadly efficiency. They were veterans, men who had survived years on the Eastern Front. They knew how to kill, and Omaha Beach had become their perfect range. Cota crouched behind a small mound of sand, bullets hitting inches from his face. Another officer crawled beside him, panicked. "Sir, we can't advance! We're pinned!" Cota glared at him. "If we stay here, we die. If we move, we might live. Those are our choices." The officer hesitated. Cota shouted at him, "Get your men off this beach!" Then Cota stood up, fully, deliberately, in full view of the enemy sharpshooters. Men nearby stared in disbelief. A private shouted, "General, get down, they'll kill you." Cota turned to him, voice commanding, "Son, if I don't stand up, no one will." And he began walking, not crouching, not ducking, walking upright through a storm of bullets. His boldness spread like fire. Men started rising. Others began crawling forward. Some simply followed him out of reflex, drawn by the gravitational pull of his resolve. Cota moved among the soldiers like a force of nature. He knelt beside a radio operator who had lost his unit. "Who are you with, son?" "To 29th Infantry, sir. Or what's left of it." "Then you're with me now. Grab your gear. We're breaking this line." He found a group of engineers struggling to push a Bangalore torpedo under the barbed wire. One of them was crying from the stress. Cota placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "You're doing fine. Push it in. We need you." The explosion blew open a gap wide enough for a single-file line. Cota was the first one through. He scrambled up the slope with 24 soldiers behind him. The ground was muddy and steep. Machine gun bullets struck the earth near his feet. Mortar shells burst on the hillside. Men fell. Others kept climbing. Then he saw a tank destroyer crew hiding behind their overturned vehicle. "Why aren't you firing?" Cota demanded. "Sir, we can't reach the main gun. It's jammed." "Then use your damn rifles. Pick off anything that moves. We're getting off this beach today." He kept moving. A few hundred yards down the line, he encountered a small group of soldiers pinned behind a hedgehog obstacle, mostly Rangers. "What outfit is this?" Cota shouted. "5th Rangers," someone yelled back. Cota didn't hesitate. He pointed up the slope at the impossible climb at the unseen bunkers above. "Well then, God damn it, Rangers lead the way." The words were electric. They shook the fear out of the men. They became a spark that would ignite the entire assault. The Rangers surged forward, climbing the bluff finger by finger, slipping in mud, dodging bullets, clawing their way upward with bayonets and bare hands. Cota followed them. Not behind, with them. Halfway up the slope, he found a boy, no older than 19, huddled behind a rock, shaking uncontrollably. "I can't go up there," the soldier whispered. "I just can't." Cota knelt beside him. "Look at me," he said softly. The boy lifted his eyes. "You're not going up there alone. I'm going with you." The boy nodded, wiped his eyes, and stood. Together, they climbed. By the time they reached the top, smoke hung over the bluffs like a toxic fog. German machine gunners pivoted their weapons toward the Americans. The Rangers charged, screaming, throwing grenades into narrow firing slits, storming trenches with brutal close-quarters combat. Cota directed them from the center of the chaos. "Flank left! Take that trench! Get a grenade in that bunker. Keep pushing, don't stop." The German line, once unbreakable, began to splinter. One bunker fell, then another, then a third. Within hours, American forces secured the high ground and established a foothold inland. Omaha Beach, the bloodiest landing of D-Day, had been transformed from a death trap into a victory. But the cost was staggering. Cota walked the battlefield afterward, his uniform torn, covered in dust and soot, boots soaked with seawater and blood. Medics carried wounded men down the slopes. Officers counted what was left of their companies. Fresh units arrived from the beach, stepping over shell craters and broken equipment. A captain approached Cota and said, "Sir, I don't know how any of us made it off that sand." Cota wiped sweat from his brow and answered quietly, "Because we had no other choice." Later, soldiers would say, "He didn't lead from behind. He led from the front. He refused to crawl when the rest of us were afraid to stand. He brought order to chaos. He saved Omaha." General Norman Dutch Cota received the Distinguished Service Cross for his heroism. But medals are small things. The men who survived knew what he had done. They knew who had given them the courage to rise when everything around them screamed to stay down. Dutch Cota didn't just survive D-Day. He shaped it. He carried men forward by sheer force of will. And on a beach, designed to be an American graveyard, he lit the spark that saved thousands. Omaha Beach will forever be remembered for its brutality. But in its darkest hour, one man stood when no one else would, and the tide of history changed with him.